people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. The first mention of controversial Olympian Imane Khelif in a long time via World Boxing News. Olympic gold medalist Imane Khelif is not giving up on intentions to box, despite rules in place that block the Algerian from an amateur or professional boxing career. Khelif posted several images today in training. Post as many pictures as you want. The rules are what the rules are. And I think World Boxing News is getting a bit ahead of themselves, suggesting that the athlete means to continue their amateur boxing career when just the act of posting some pictures doesn't mean they'll be able to. That could just be Imane Khelif looking to further capitalize on the gold medal that they already won. But as far as boxing again, they won't be able to. World Boxing News is now overseeing all of the amateur boxing, standing in place of the IBA, who had already banned Imane Khelif and one other athlete for reportedly testing positive for XY chromosomes as opposed to XX, which would denote the female category. These are not females, and anybody can see that. Many people said it during the Olympic Games, but because the IBA lost recognition of the IOC, the ban placed upon them was lifted, as well as the IOC's willingness to be a party to the ulterior motives of a particular community that chose to co-opt this issue, the LGBTQ community. But the athlete themselves never claimed to be a party to that community, especially since the predominant religion in the region they hail from is Muslim. I don't know that there is an LGBTQ community in Algeria, though due to this situation's semblance to the identity politics that we often see here in the West, they chose to co-opt this issue, as they were the most vocal in defending the athlete's right to compete in these games in spite of already being previously banned for being a man. A man with a DSD, though, all the same. A man with testicles, a man with elevated levels of testosterone, with a physical advantage over the other athletes in the category. A man. These leftist lunatics would have you believe that there is no distinguishable difference between two individuals with different chromosomes, that there's no real difference between someone with XY chromosomes and XX. Nut jobs. Accenting the dangerous and cavalier perspectives of a group that likes to pride themselves on being progressive, even if it's at the expense of others. Isn't that the way it is with all the issues they champion? It's true, it always requires more of everyone else than it actually requires of them, because in this situation, they're not the ones fighting. They're not the ones that spend 4 years fighting in amateur tournaments to maybe one day make it to the Olympic Games, to then be confronted by what is so obviously a man. They will instead pretend they don't know what that is. It's indefinable. Buddy, if you can't define what a man is, or what a woman is, what it really is, then no decision-making should be left up to you. I don't even think you should be allowed to vote. Nut jobs. But it was those leftist loonies that most got behind Imane Khelif, even though it was obvious to everyone that this athlete should have never been allowed to compete in these games or in this category, as it poses a great risk to all the other female fighters, the real ones, constituting an unfair state of play based on the biological differences of a man and a woman, while the leftists pretend they can't define what that is. That's okay. Everybody else can. And everybody else did. It's important to note that Imane Khelif is not actually banned from competition right now. The reason they're not fighting is because mandatory chromosomal testing is implemented for all the athletes in a category, and Imane Khelif, like Lin Yutin, refuses to participate, because if they do, they know what it's gonna say. They know the tests will vindicate the IBA, who already said this. Those are men. Irrespective of being misgendered at birth due to a DSD, or whatever the uniqueness of their circumstances are, the bottom line is, Those are biological men. Though I didn't need to be an endocrinologist myself to know that. It was plain as day. Further accenting the dishonesty of the people on the left, as they tried to defame and devalue the IBA's findings, even if you don't want to take it from them, because you say they're a corrupt organization. Okay, fine. Let somebody else test these athletes. They didn't want to do that either, because underneath it all, they knew what the tests would say, what the results would find. It was always about co-opting this issue to further their own agenda and normalize men competing in women's categories. Irrespective of the health risk to the actual females in the category, they didn't care. They wanted to deliberately blur the line that separates them as a means to spread their own mental illness to the rest of us, because this far a descent from reality is insanity. It's madness. So at this time, Imane Khelif can post as many pictures through a heavy bag wearing boxing gloves to their Instagram as much as their heart desires. But if you're not going to be tested, you're not going to compete. And it's as simple as that. In the pros, well, it's even worse in the pros, because in the pros, it's not a tournament format. So all the women in the pros don't have to deal with you or be subject to these identity politics. There were a lot of sensationalist claims made by the athlete that they were going to sue Elon Musk and sue J.K. Rowling for suggesting that they were a man, none of which came to fruition, that the athlete was going to go pro, and they were talking to a lot of major promotional outfits, yet the athlete isn't going pro. Ain't with no major promotional outfit. What major outfit would want to promote this controversy? So it all played out like I told you it would. They don't belong in that category. They never did. And as far as I'm concerned, the IOC should have stripped them of that gold medal, because they never should have got the chance to win it in the first place. In men's super lightweight news, former champion Keyshawn Davis won't stay at 140 long, as he plans to move up again. Keyshawn Davis doesn't want to waste any time. The 26-year-old will return later on this month in New York's MSG when he takes on Jermaine Ortiz. The bout will serve as the co-main event to Shakur Stevenson versus Teofimo Lopez on Ring 6. I think Shakur likely had something to do with that. We all know he's bosom buddies with Keyshawn, so it helps that he's the headline fighter. He likely got Keyshawn this spot. This will be Keyshawn's first fight at 140 pounds, but don't expect him to plant his flag at junior welter, which he views as a pit stop before competing at welter. You have to wonder, if Keyshawn Davis already plans to move up to 147 beyond this, will he even make 140? Will he bother? He didn't bother to make the weight for his last fight. I see the boxing landscape, and I understand Shakur will be a champion at 140 if and when he beats Lopez, and that's my decision. I feel like boxing is my division. Davis, who has a close personal relationship with Shakur, said recently on Inside the Ring, "I feel like I can really do whatever I want to do. I know what I want to do after I beat Jermaine. I want to move up to 147 and get a welterweight title." But can he do it? The welterweight division today is actually a lot weaker than junior welterweight, which is funny because welter is often dubbed one of the glamour weights, but there's nothing glamorous about the talent pool there right now. Davis's 2025 started off hot. The 2020 Olympic silver medalist proved that he was levels above Denis Berinchyk. When they met February 14th, it was one-way action as Davis easily stopped him in the 4th round to grab his first world title. A few months later, Davis was supposed to have his coronation. However, his June 7th homecoming fight against Edwin De Los Santos in Norfolk, Virginia was cancelled thanks to Davis missing weight by 4.3 pounds. That blunder also led to him losing his WBO title on the scales. Missing the weight by that much? Was he even trying to make the weight? I would say no. I would say that Keyshawn knew he was going to move up to super lightweight after that, so he didn't bother to make it, thinking he could get away with it. It ended up getting the fight canceled. In the immediate aftermath, Keyshawn was involved in a backstage brawl with Nair Albright, who'd upset his brother at the Scope Arena on that undercard. None of it was his proudest moment, but Davis claims to be in a better and more mature place. He also believes he's improved as a fighter, despite sitting on the shelf and switching to a new trainer. Currently, there is no quantifiable metric to gauge whether or not Keyshawn Davis has improved or not. How would he have done that when he's been on the shelf since the Berinchyk fight? And how do we know that this new training situation will be an improvement from the old one because he was being trained by Bo McIntyre, who trained Terrence Crawford, who currently trains Lester the Molester Martinez. He's one of the best trainers in the industry. Who's training Keyshawn now? I don't know, but he'll get the chance to prove that he isn't all talk when he takes on Imane Ortiz. The 29-year-old highly ranked contender is on a 3-fight winning streak, with 2 of those victories coming by way of stoppage. Junior welterweight has more than enough names to occupy Davis's time. Nevertheless, welterweight is drawing his attention. It's also an easier landscape to navigate, with Mario Barrios holding the WBC, the most beatable of those champions. The ring rates Barrios at number 10. I just feel like those guys can't beat me from 140 up to 147. I think it would be easier to win a belt at 147 than 140, given how weak it is. This has to be, by and large, the weakest era of welterweights I've ever seen, in tandem with Keyshawn perhaps not wanting to boil down to 140. 140 isn't that far off from 135, and we know that Keyshawn was struggling to make 135, so he's probably struggling to make 140, or he anticipates that he will be, that he doesn't want an extended stay there. The names at 147 are also bigger: Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Rolly Romero, all bigger names than what you find at 140, save Teofimo Lopez, who his buddy is about to fight anyway. So he doesn't plan on staying there very long. The Imane Ortiz fight does raise some concerns, though, because the night of, it will have been practically a year's time from Keyshawn's last fight. He'll be at a new weight, with a new trainer. How is he going to look? He's dealing with a guy that's got a very pesky style, who isn't afraid to stink the joint out by fighting negative. And so how is Keyshawn going to look in that fight? Did he really improve? There's a chance he don't look good in that fight. There is also a question of who's going to be promoting him moving forward. What is his promotional situation? Up until this point, he's been with Top Rank that currently doesn't have a broadcast partner. Is he still with them? You saw at Boxer that some fighters had it written into their contracts that part of the contract is they have to box on Sky, so that when Boxer lost the Sky deal, those contracts were voided. Does that apply to Keyshawn? Huh? Did he have it written in his contract that his fights have to be on ESPN, and did Top Rank losing the ESPN deal void his contract? Has it reached its end? The other day, I heard Eddie Hearn make some mention of doing a Lewis Crocker versus Keyshawn Davis fight, and I thought to myself, why would Eddie want to do that? Why would he afford Keyshawn a crack at the apple at what is his champion? Well, Keyshawn did debut as a professional with them. He did, but then he migrated over to Top Rank. The question is he still with Top Rank, or will he be going back to Matchroom? Why would Eddie Hearn have it in his head to make a fight between him and Lewis Crocker? That was his idea. Keyshawn does plan on going to welterweight after all, but I don't get the sense it's with Lewis Crocker in mind. It's with Ryan, it's with Devin, it's with Rolly, the bigger names. You won't get him. I don't think they'll fight him. I think they'll form their own collective bubble. They already have their own plans. I mean, I heard if Ryan beats Mario, he might fight Conor Benn after that. But there's also a Devin Haney rematch to think about. They won't fight him. What welterweight champions he might be able to get his hands on? Lewis Crocker, maybe, if he can stay champion long enough to see the fight happen. There is also Shakram Giyasov. Giyasov ain't no champion. Not yet, but he soon might be. As we now know, Rolly's not going to get the Pacquiao fight. He was hoping for that. He was holding out for that. He's not going to get it. And he's currently under orders to satisfy his mandatory Shakram Giyasov. I don't think he's going to fight Giyasov. I think he would sooner drop the belt than roll the dice with a standout amateur like Shakram Giyasov, that to him is a high risk, low reward. So if Rolly would have dropped that belt, and then that belt went to Giyasov, Giyasov could then defend it against Keyshawn. Those are the two guys I think Keyshawn can get. He can get Giyasov, and he can get Crocker. But the bigger names, I think they're going to freeze him out. I think they're going to give him the cold shoulder. They're going to ignore him. And the other added bit of this story, happening in the background, if Keyshawn has no intention of staying at 140, that alters Shakur Stevenson's original plan. When he recently sat down with the Divine Hook, he told her that he was going to beat Teofimo, win the brown belt, then drop it so Keyshawn could pick it up. If Keyshawn's not staying there, Shakur might. Though as stated, 140 pounds compared to 147 is actually deeper. and more dangerous. We saw what Shakur had to recently endure with a pressure fighter in William Zepeda, who was throwing 3 and 4 and 5 punches to every one of Shakur's.
Shakur won the fight, but it wasn't easy.
So just imagine if he is so confronted with even bigger pressure fighters that have a bigger punch than William in Gary Antoine Russell or Subriel Matias. Stylistically, it would be the same fight, just at a higher weight with bigger guys.
Pure boxers don't usually fare well against pressure fighters. Only the really special ones, like Shakur, the really good ones, can handle the heat.
More often than not, pure boxers like Shakur falter under the pressure and the pace of the pressure fighters, though he himself was good enough against William that he was able to make it through. At a higher weight, with bigger punchers, though, it does become more perilous.
What about Hitchens?
Richardson Hitchens, the IBF champion? Nobody wants to see Shakur fight that guy. 2 pure boxers?
No gracias.
I'm not gonna pretend to be remotely interested in any fight that involves Richardson Hitchens, let alone 2 pure boxers. No thank you.
I'll pass.
The most interesting fights for Shakur against the other 140-pound champions would be against either Gary or Subriel. That's how I see it. If it's not them,
gotta assume that Turkey is paired up with Turkey El Sheikh for the foreseeable future, so long as Turkey wants to use him. Gotta assume that Shakur Stevenson, if he beats Lopez, he's definitely gonna drop that WBC title at 135 pounds. At which point, Ricardo Munoz and William Zepeda will fight for it, so that the new WBC champion can be crowned between one of them.
yeah, Shakur's not going back down to lightweight for what?
The Gervonta Davis fight that he was never going to have because Gervonta doesn't want to do it. To fight a couple of greenhorns and Abdullah Mason and Andy Cruz.
Shakur's not going back to 135.
Suppose things are a lot more interesting if he stays at 140, assuming that he does, though already facing the biggest name at that weight in his next fight, because that's what Lopez is. He's a more well-known guy than Gary, than Subriel, or than Richardson Hitchens. You do have to wonder, is Shakur going to stay there beyond this fight?
The path to unifying this division, I would say, is comparatively more difficult than unifying welterweight than moving up there. It is. 140, though not thought of as being one of the glamour weights like 147, is a comparatively deeper division with better fighters in it. Better fights to make.
We'll see if Shakur stays there after he beats Lopez.